It wasn't too long after the final whistle last night that we got the news that Saints would be looking for another new manager. The statement said we can confirm that we have taken the difficult decision to part ways with men's first team manager Russell Martin. Normally we expect these kind of things in the morning, Alfie. Were you expecting that so soon last night?
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of the fact probably thought it would be 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. I think the last two have been 10 a.m, haven't they? So I was actually walking back to my colleague's car at the time when I got a phone call saying that it's going to be in 5 minutes, so get ready. But in terms of the season, I think nobody can be surprised at this point. The board have been desperate for it to work for Russell Martin, and I've been through the reasons why. Financial, what he did last season. I think finance is probably the big reason. And they want him to work, but clearly after that, I think we probably knew about 12 minutes in that that was going to be the last game we saw Russell Martin. So yeah, the fact it was a a late night for us, not too surprised. We've seen loads of developments today as well in terms of where we go next. But I just think personally for me, I will miss sort of engagement with Russell Martin a little bit because I think he was good fun to deal with. We had a couple, engagements, I guess you'd call them. And it was always interesting. And that Wembley final is something that I'm never going to forget, personally and professionally. One of the best days of my life. But what we've seen this season has been, nowhere near good enough. And I think at this point, it's a decision they didn't want to make. And I don't know how much difference it's going to make to the season. But it's one that it felt untenable with the amount of fan reaction we got in the stadium last night.
Yeah, it wasn't great, and there's lots to talk about there in terms of what the next appointment is, whether it's a short-term thing, whether we're looking for next season or not. Steve, I guess you should be applauded for rebuilding the team on and off the pitch after the relegation. So let's not forget that.
Well, this is kind of the thing that kind of struck me a lot last night in sort of during that first half, especially when things got properly sort of toxic in the stands. Was that just how short memories everybody has? Like this idea that Martin has some sort of ruined the club. It's like, well, hang on. If he hadn't done what he did last season, we wouldn't have got back up into the Premier League. So you've got to be fair and even-handed on these things, and people just aren't. It's utter sort of recency bias and only deal with the sort of immediate situation, and apparently now he's the worst thing that's ever happened to the club, and it's just nonsense. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, just the manner of that first half, I think, was kind of on the sort of back of the building up and the number of defeats. I mean, we've obviously discussed at length over the course of the season how little factors have gone against us, whether it's been refereeing decisions, injuries, individual mistakes, moment of brilliance from an opposition player, that sort of thing. But ultimately, there comes a point where everything just falls apart, and those first 15 minutes were just an absolute shambles. And I mean, literally, I don't think we touched the ball from kickoff before the ball ended up in the back of our net, and it was just. I mean, as soon as that happens, you just think, well, this is just done. Because, like everything else we've seen over the course of the season has been that while the players may not be good enough, and the system may not be good enough, and the tactics and everything surrounding it, you at least felt that the players bought into it. 25 minutes into the game last night, I think you probably finally got the sense that maybe this is gone, and there isn't quite that belief anymore.
Especially as all the talk was starting on the front foot, getting at them. Yeah. It's a great time to play them. Yes. We're going to try something a little bit different, and then 40 seconds later.
Well, I mean, trying something different is not putting a tackle in for 40 seconds and letting them run through the middle of us. That works superbly well. It's a shame it's ended the way it has. I mean, I think there have been various points, even in this relatively short period, where the decision could have been made and people would have said, yeah, fair enough, they're at least giving us an opportunity to stay up.
Do you think it should have been made sooner?
Personally, I think if they had the kind of belief that his system wasn't quite going to stack up and that he wasn't going to make the requisite changes, actually the time to do it would have been June. Yeah. That would have been utterly brutal. But we are a fan base that has seen this before with the Nigel Adkins, Mauricio Pochettino changeover. When somebody who the the guy in charge believed was going to be better and was going to be able to take us forward, as soon as that person became available, it didn't really matter what had gone in the intervening period, because I mean Adkins got sacked off the back of coming back from 2-0 down away at Stamford Bridge to get a point. But they kind of did the move, got it done, kind of took the backlash for a week or two, and then once Pochettino had come in and settled down and shown what he was all about, suddenly it all went very quiet.
Are you saying we're a fickle bunch?
Oh, massively. I mean, we're clearly not alone in that. I mean, that's kind of just the football fan as a sort of demographic, really. But it is fascinating how opinions change so very quickly, and there's very little context applied, and people just it's so polarising. It's either he's great or he's terrible, and there's very little grey area in between. And it doesn't really allow for an awful lot of debate. It does get a little bit tedious, but at the end of the day, been done. As Alfie said, I'm quite surprised they did it late last night. I expected again it would be a Monday morning thing. Disappointed that we don't kind of go with the trend of every other club and have a photo of the corner flag. We had a photo of the front.
We're going to have to stop asking for that in the future, aren't we?
Yeah.
Maybe the reason it was last night was because they made the decision after about 15 minutes, so they had a bit of time to do it. Because normally you'd have to, you'd make the decision at 11 o'clock or whatever, and have to wait till the morning. So
we're going to have to change the chant to sacked in the evening. I mean, the bottom line is then he's going to go down as one of our worst Premier League managers, isn't he? Worse than Nathan Jones and Paul Sturrock and Paul Puel and Ruben Sellers. And that's only half the story, isn't it? Steve was saying about the context, and it's a strange feeling today.
Yeah, if you just look at statistics, then yes, he will. Amount of games played, amount of games won, etc., win percentage and all that. But in time, I think he'll just be remembered as the guy who got us promoted. People tend to only remember you cherry pick your memories as you go further into the future. So people will remember the day at Wembley and stuff like that. They probably won't remember the struggles that we had at times last season when we had the runs where we didn't win a game and all that sort of stuff, and it looked like it wasn't going to have a happy ending. But the fact that we got to Wembley, and as I think I said before, I've been watching this team for over 50 years, and that's almost certainly my best day ever supporting the team with the fact that I got there with my family and all that, and he gave us that day out, and that was brilliant. And that's probably become a bit of a double-edged thing, because I think, the word I hear a lot about the situation in the Premier League is the word brutal. And as Steve said, we could have, if they decided his style of football wasn't for the Premier League, they could have made a change in June. They could have made a change after Bournemouth, Leicester, Wolves, all of those a few weeks ago. And I think that's the sort of goodwill towards him, and probably the contract extension he got as a result.
It looks more bizarre, doesn't it? By the
I wonder if that was stipulated off the back of being promoted.
Yeah,
so
I think it was,
I don't know that.
It was probably set up when he originally got the job. He gets promoted, you'll get this this extra contract or whatever. But no, here we are now, and it's a very difficult situation to recruit a manager in, because conventional football wisdom says that anyone in this position that we are in, with this number of points after this many games, you're not staying up. No. But then someone might look at it and go, well, if I win 3 games in a row, we're back in touch. So, these guys are professional managers. They have massive belief in their own ability. So maybe they think they can make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. The sow's ear being our squad of players, of course, who, I'm probably going to get onto this, were a disgrace last night. A number of them were an absolute disgrace. And that to me was a performance, as Steve alluded to, that they were almost throwing the manager under the bus. They might not have meant to, but that's what they were doing with the lack of effort, the lack of heart, just all the non-negotiables that should automatically happen as a professional footballer just weren't there last night. And Tottenham were very good. We weren't up for the challenge, and that's why we got absolutely battered.
Yeah, absolute mauling. So, in given Russell Martin that bit of extra time, have the board, in a way, created a situation now where there isn't going to be a manager that of any decent calibre that wants to come in. As Glen was saying, you're going to have that relegation on your CV, so it makes things a little bit difficult. Do you think they're going to be looking ahead to next year now? Or?
I think it definitely makes it trickier. Glenn's right in the fact that all managers believe that they can turn a squad around, right? That's why they're there. They were probably elite athletes, they're probably elite players, so they've all got that ego. They think they can turn it around. So I don't think it's like no manager will take the job. I think we've seen links today that someone like Casper Holmand elsewhere would be interested in a Premier League job for the next 24 games, whatever it is. If that,
There's still a lot of games. That's the thing, isn't it?
yeah, it's not quite 24, 22, isn't it? It's 22 games.
It's enough though.
Yeah, I mean, well, Glenn's right. It's enough games in the sense that actually, if you win 2 or 3 in a row, you are back in there and they're not relegated. But we know that what history dictates is that every other team who's been in this position before has finished bottom, let alone 18th.
Yeah.
And Saints haven't won 2 games in a row, I think, in the Premier League since February or March 2022. I may be doing them a disservice. They may have won 2 in a row, and we were trying to debate this before. So the odds of going and winning 2 or 3 in a row just does feel slim. But what they have done, and we spoke about it on the podcast before, in my opinion, is that they don't want to make another managerial change in May. They really can't afford to. If push came to shove, I'm sure that they could find the money somewhere. But they don't want to have to change again, like we did with Nathan Jones, Ruben Sellers, Russell Martin. So the next manager, for me, has to be somebody who is willing to manage in the Championship and is willing to bring this side up next season if it comes to that, which it almost certainly will. So, you think about someone like Casper Holmand, if he's willing to stay, fantastic. Carlos Corberán, it's not an appointment that's going to make everybody jump off their seats, but he would probably be more than happy in the Championship. And Danny Roll, if they go ahead and speak to Danny Roll, he would definitely, be in the Championship as well. So they've got to look for a manager which is going to do 2 seasons. There's no point, in my opinion, bringing in a 6-month patch-up job and then having to pay them off or pay someone else to bring them in July. That being said, if you could get like a David Moyes or a Graham Potter on a short-term deal, a lot of people would be tempted.
We're not going to see Rafa or
well, exactly.
Big Sam
I'm sure people would be tempted, but is that the right thing to do right now for the club? I'm not sure.
No. Okay. It's in a way, it's kind of like damage control, isn't it? Steve, I just want to talk about the recruitment thing because it's coming up time and time again. I can't help but think he was destined to fail once that transfer window closed, and we've talked about this on the podcast, but we keep on coming back to it. They've got to take a bit of blame for this and
massively.
recruiting the right people and giving them the right tools.
Yeah,
to do
hugely.
The job.
I mean, it's noticeable actually that the big key decisions that have been made at the club during Sport Republic's tenure, the kind of one period where they've generally got things right was the period where Jason Wilcox was in situ as sporting director, technical director, whatever his job title was. And either side of that, there was basically a void. So beforehand, you had Matt Crocker, who was in, but not really. He'd kind of been pushed to the side, and Rasmus Ankerson was kind of running the show. And since Wilcox left in, was it March? April. They've not decided to appoint somebody in to replace him. So again, that's now been that. All the recruitment stuff has been kind of swallowed up by a number of different people, assuming kind of coming together. Whereas under Wilcox, there was one single point of contact who kind of identified the strategy and executed it. Didn't get everything right, of course he didn't, because no club gets 100% on transfers. But it felt like there was a level of accountability. Somebody was responsible for this, and as a result, you make doubly sure that you get things right and you dot I's and cross T's. Whereas either side of that, we've been an absolute rabble. I mean, you look at the players that we've signed this summer. Some okay, I think some of those signings have been good. Fernandez has been a find, and I think he will go on to bigger and better things. Aaron Ramsdale, I think. Let's be honest. At the end of the season, we'll probably get our money back for him.
Yeah.
So players like that, I think, are have kind of worked out. But there's so many that we've signed, and you look at it, just think, how does that work? Ryan Fraser did a good job for us in the Championship, but who on earth is thinking that he is a Premier League player? Even if you do get him on a free, you're still going to pay him for 2 years. And it's madness that there's been this void of accountability on the recruitment side. And recruitment is so important for a team that gets promoted. You look at Ipswich, everyone's obviously had their say about Ipswich, who spent like 150, 160 million because they had to. But so many of their signings look like they at least have the potential to belong, and they were signed with a particular match strategy in mind. Whereas you look at our ones, it just all feels a little bit arbitrary. It's like, oh, that player's available. Let's put an offer in for him.
Totally agree.
Rather than having a clear idea of which positions were most in need of strengthening, what particular attributes are you looking for? Do these players match those attributes? And if so, which ones are you likely to be able to sign? And then you dedicate your resource to that. And we don't seem to have gone down that road at all. We seem to have, I mean, I don't know whether it's driven by particular agents who the club are friendly with, or whether it's literally just a case, kind of almost someone playing Football Manager and just going down a list of players who might be available or might be interested. Yeah. We've madness.
We've done some amazing things when you look at the. I mean, Ryan Fraser's a good one to mention. We signed Ryan Fraser. We signed Maxwell Cornet. We signed Ben Brereton Diaz. They all play the same position. Yeah. They're all varying degrees of not very good. We already had Kamaldeen Sulemana. 2 years, has produced nothing. And we had Sam Adozie, who we loaned out, who's probably the best of the five, and he's the only one who's not here. So we spent. Yeah, sorry.
Could you rank the other four now?
It's tough, isn't it?
Joint last.
And the fact that it's tough tells you that our forward options. I mean, we lost Che Adams last season, and everyone at the time said, okay, Che Adams was okay, but he's not brilliant. It seems like our idea was to replace him with Ross Stewart, who's technically dead, clinically, and he's so we didn't do that. This reminds me very much of the Claude Puel season where we got rid of Pella, Mane from the forward line, and we went into the season with Shane Long, Charlie Austin and his beer and pies, and Jay Rodriguez, who was injured, coming back off a big injury, and then we wondered why we struggled to score goals. Yeah. I mean, Adam Armstrong should have been a squad player this year. Yep. He should not. There's no way that guy should be first choice. He might score the odd goal, but he's never going to have a good game at this level because he's,
and we know that because
and we know because we had 2 years, 2 years of it.
We know that the front half of the pitch, the only thing that livens it up is Tyler Dibbling, who came through the academy. Yeah. So that shows you how bad the recruitment is at the top end of the pitch. I agree with Steve about the midfield is not bad. Fernandes is in there, Downs is in there, though he's been, up until recently, he's been used in the wrong way. Yeah. He's been told to press high up the pitch, and then we wonder why there's a big void behind him. We had that void in the Championship last year when he wasn't available, and we seem to be trying to make him play further forward now and press more aggressively. And if he gets bypassed, there's no one there. Joe Aribo can't run when you're playing against a team that plays with pace like Spurs did. He really struggles. So, Fernandes, Lallana, okay, yes, good player still, because he's only been fit for, I think he's played about 20% of the minutes this season. So you can't
that many.
You can't count on him as a player who's going to play regularly. I think,
although he might come into his own this week with changes.
Maybe so. But I mean, I think potentially left back. Again, we've still got Ryan Manning playing, and he played well yesterday. He was our best player.
Yeah, he's one of the best players.
He's our best player, but he was only our best. But if Ryan Manning's your best player,
that's a problem.
That's a problem. Yeah, because his ceiling is not that high. Yeah. So no one else is reaching that ceiling. But he's playing, so he's obviously better than Charlie Taylor, who was the left back we signed. You assumed to play, and so. I mean, have we got this Brazilian lad arriving?
Yeah. Wellington. I forgot about him.
Yeah. Is he still coming in? But I mean, that's a player. That's going to be a total. That might work.
It's a punt, isn't it?
It might be a joke signing.
What was your observation this week about the Villa player that they signed the same time as we signed Sulemana?
So in the same window that Southampton bought Paul Onyemaechi and Kamaldeen Sulemana for 40 million, Aston Villa signed John Duran for 15 million. But to preface it, he was 18 at the time and he wouldn't have been much use in the circumstance. But it's just an example of how those two have gone badly wrong. Paul, it looks like a decent player actually, and probably will still be useful for the rest of the season if he's still here.
If he's fit.
If he's fit, but even still, those two clearly haven't worked. But I mean, I think the striker is just going to be a cursed position now forever, I think. I mean, how many in a row have they got totally wrong? All the ones that you're linked to that go on to be amazing, Cody Gakpo, Gonzalo Ramos, Nicholas Jackson, and now even Liam Delap, who nobody wanted, but it turns out he'd have been perfect for the way that Southampton wants to play. Because you talk about Che Adams, and Cherden's wasn't the best. Well, he was definitely not the best finisher.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about that. What he was is he was quite strong for a fairly little lad, and he knew how to use it. He knew how to put himself about, and he was always in the right place to link up other players. Cameron Archer, I think, is a good signing for 18 million quid. I think he's a good player. He'll score a lot of goals next season. I'm pretty sure of that. But he's not a replacement for Cherden's. He doesn't link up play.
He's
like
the
that.
same. He's the same player as Adam Armstrong.
Well,
Slightly
Archer is the Armstrong
quicker.
upgrade
Yeah,
for me.
he
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
So, we've had games where both of those have been playing. So two players who are the same. There's nothing different about the way they play. We played against Tottenham yesterday. They had an 18-year-old centre-back who'd never played there before. And our idea of putting him under pressure was Adam Armstrong and Suleiman playing as split strikers.
You have to think that if Paul was actually fit, he'd be starting.
Yeah.
We didn't really ask after it because it felt like a bit of a side note, and I should have asked, but there were bigger things going on at that point. But if he was actually fit, then surely he'd been playing, because if not, it's just terrible management.
Yeah.
So in terms of who comes in next then, I'm going to ask the pair of you. Have we had our fingers burnt, do you think, a little bit with recruiting managers from the league below? We've obviously had Nathan Jones, haven't we, and now Russell Martin. Are we thinking there are some good appointments to be made from the Championship? We've just got them wrong.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Nathan Jones and Russell Martin are two very different sides of the coin in terms of what they offer as a potential to do anything at a higher level. I think theoretically Russell Martin's both management and playing style can work in the top flight. Usually better players. And even Manchester City are finding now that their system that has worked for so many years under Pep Guardiola, suddenly that team looks very old and very slow, and they're losing every week. I find it incredible that, like, basically ever since Pep said, "Oh, I'll learn a lot from Russell Martin." He's learned everything. It's extraordinary.
Well, go on, what's the stat? They've had exactly the same points per game since the 1st of November.
Since the 1st of
As
November,
Southampton Football Club.
Saints and Man City are both averaging 0.57 points per game, which is mental.
And it's the same defensive midfield issue.
Yeah.
I'm saying we've got a hole because we're not playing Flynn Downs where he should be playing.
Yeah.
They've obviously lost their big player in that position, Rodri, and the whole thing breaks down if you don't have that insurance against getting caught on the break. When you play, when you put so many players ahead of the ball and you rely on, not that we put many in front of the ball, but the way they do it is put lots of players in front of the ball and try and pin the opposition team in. But if you lose the ball with all those players up the pitch, we're a pound shot version of Man City, aren't we? Obviously, and we give the ball away, and there's no one there.
Do you fully agree with me that it's probably the best thing to do is to bring a manager in now who would be here for the Championship next season, or am I peddling a line that the club would find favourable there by saying, don't go out and spend a few million quid right now on a short-term punt? Do you think it would be wise to plan for next year?
Yeah, I think so. The only problem that you have now with this situation is if that guy comes in and he's your plan for next season, he may not even get that far, because if everything continues to go tits up for the remainder of the season and it's more toxic, then actually you kind of get to the end of the season. It's like, well, we can't possibly continue with this guy because it's been an absolute disaster. The right-minded amongst us would obviously offer the context and kind of take it for what it is.
When they make the appointment, then do the club have to make clear this is an appointment for next season as well as for now? And do you think that would even stave it off, or do you think it would be forgotten after 4 results?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on how the results and performances go over the course of the remainder of the season. Because if you end up with basically 5 of the next 7 or 8 games end up like last night, then you're doomed right from the start. And no matter what you say, it's like, well, this is already a disaster, and these players are already not paying blinders bit of notice.
All the new manager has to do if he comes in, I think most people are expecting us to get relegated now. I mean, you have to be a deluded optimist as a Saints fan to expect us to do anything other than get relegated. So all the new manager has to do this season really is show that he can turn it around, win a few games, perhaps, and at least make it interesting. You can't be getting. I mean, we've been tanked 5 in the last 2 home games. You can't carry on like that, because, as Steve said, you will just lose any goodwill that you might have had if you are getting absolutely thumped, especially in the home games. that just is not the way to go. But they're going to have to offer whoever they get in order to make someone want the job. They're going to have to say, they can't say to them, "You've got to keep us up."
I hope they're looking at it as an option though, because I kind of feel like it took us so much effort to get here, and we're here now. And just to draw a line under it and go, well, that's that. It didn't work.
Yeah.
We'll build for next year. You might as well have kept him, because you want someone that's going to get you out of the championship.
Well, I think
he's proven.
You offer a big bonus to
done
keep
that.
them up, keep us up. But
I think they would have liked to, really. Like, I think deep down,
Well,
they
the fact
would have
that
loved to keep him.
there was never any talk of him getting the boot at any point. The 3 international windows were all prime opportunities, as they always have been, for teams that are struggling, but that can see a glimmer of light if they make the change. Those 2 week periods are always a good opportunity for clean sweep. New guy comes in, has 2 weeks to work with the players and work on something a bit different. And
Not that always goes well, does it?
Well, no, but there was never any paper talk or anything no rumours at all that Russell Martin was in genuine trouble.
What has happened here simply, there was obviously loads more factors to it as well, but the fan reaction is what has forced them to make the decision, because ultimately clubs do serve their fans, and I think you can ignore social media fans because a lot of it's just hot air. It's,
and a lot of people that aren't in the ground.
Exactly.
But when you're in the ground, when it gets like that,
it was from 12 minutes into the game. It was almost non-stop until after full time.
But it wouldn't have happened. I genuinely don't think it would have happened yesterday if we'd lost 1-0 with a battling performance. It's the fact that we were so
gutless,
so pathetic, so gutless from the first whistle until half-time. I mean, there's no point in talking about the second half because it didn't matter. Spurs took off their best player and just walked through it because they've got an injury crisis of their own, you know.
Son and Maddison always score against Saints. Doesn't matter who they're playing for, what it is, they always score against Saints.
It's because Tottenham are much better than us.
Well, yeah.
Are we kind of saying that it's almost like they need to say to Russell Martin, just have the rest of the season off and we'll get someone else in to make a fist of it and then come back in the summer and get us back up again?
The ego wouldn't take that, would it?
Yeah, imagine that. Take a break.
Yeah.
That never ends well.
Have Christmas off with your girlfriend.
The stat today was, not counting this season, there have been 91 times when a team have parted company with their manager whilst they're in the relegation zone. 36 of those occasions the teams avoided relegation, so the success rate is about 40%.
It's going to be a dead interesting comparison between us and Wolves, obviously, because both been managers the same week, both got, I mean, our playing staff and their playing staff is different. I would probably suggest theirs is probably slightly stronger, but they seem to have a right collection of idiots who just want to fight everybody at the moment. So
that was the one thing the Saints had, wasn't it? Really, there wasn't. Like, the last 2 games Wolves have had, they've had fights after the match. They've been players sent off after full time.
Yes,
they've stripped the captaincy.
Changed the captaincy. Yeah.
Stripped the captaincy. Where at least Saints had looked dignified.
And then the new captain is the guy that gets involved.
Yeah,
Semedo was involved in a little bit of that after.
But they've got Cunha banned, Nuri banned. Anyway.
Just a quick bit on Simon Rusk. So some of us thought Adam Lallana might get put in charge, but it's the under-21s manager, Simon Rusk, on an interim basis, they said. Do we know anything about him? Just he was the set-piece coach.
Fresh off a 5-1 defeat to Man United 21s as well. So perfect.
Yeah. Well, obviously, he came into the 21s in the summer when Amo-Ameyaw, who I thought did a really good job last season, left for personal reasons. He was Scottish, lived near the border, and I think it was a long way away for a young family. So Simon Rusk came in. I think it was seen as a real coup at the time. He's managed England under-19s, Brighton under-21s, and he's got a good track record at those clubs with the youth games. Excuse me. And he also managed Stockport for a year, interestingly. And I'm pretty sure he went on an 18-game unbeaten run with Stockport, or something like that, and then ended up losing however many of the next games and getting sacked. So that's his only experience in the senior game management. But I guess it makes sense. I thought Adam Lallana was the obvious choice, but I suppose he is a player, and it's a little bit of a different dynamic. But I mean, good luck to Simon. He's got an easy game on Wednesday at least, hasn't he? Playing the best team in the country, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Do you think it opens the door for some of the players that haven't been in the squad, been on the bench?
Do you mean Bella Kocha?
I mean, theoretically, there's
a few that have been sort of bombed out the squad.
Theoretically, there's a clean slate, but I mean, Rusk has been in and around the setup for obviously since the summer, so he will have a good idea of who's worth persevering with and who isn't. I mean, bear in mind, Bella Kocha decided he didn't fancy playing for his under-21 team. I wouldn't imagine he'll be one of the first names on the team sheet on Wednesday night. That's for sure. But Yeah, I mean, you never quite know. I mean, obviously, every manager will have their own different ideas on how to approach these things, and maybe you kind of just take a slightly pragmatic view and say, well, actually, I just want to have a complete sort of fresh 11. So actually, we're going to make a load of changes.
Yeah.
But I mean, against Liverpool, I think that would be slightly foolhardy, to be honest. Because all that's going to happen is you're going to end up getting smashed again.
Well, also, it's a cup quarter-final.
Yeah.
The last day of a cup. If you win this game, you've got a two-legged semi-final. You've got a chance of actually making something in the season. So I don't think they should be
Worked well 2
making
years
changes
ago.
or writing the game off at all. Got to give it a chance, haven't you? And like I say, qualify for Europa Conference League by winning in Wembley in February, and everyone's happy.
75-game season next year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so if we had only lost 1-0 yesterday, they would have given Russell Martin probably the game on Wednesday.
Yeah.
To see how that went. As it is, they decided that was so bad.
You're just kicking the can down the road, aren't you, in that situation?
We're going into this game on Wednesday with a rookie manager who's 10 months in charge of Stockport in the National League. And good luck, mate.